technology has evolved a lot. First one, super obvious, is this thing here called the smartphone, which we all have in our hands every single minute of the day, for some of us even the night. And this thing here is a fantastic communication device, and it's also super, super smart. So I don't need to dwell too much on that, on this particular crowd. Perhaps another thing that we don't think of so much when we talk about retail is this. Now, this doesn't look like a sexy, cool machine, but you see them in pretty much every single store you go to. I took that picture. I could have chosen the one with a tablet, which is, nicer and more slick. The reality is, it's the same thing. It's called an electronic point-of-sale system. And the reason I wanted to take you behind the counter and look at this is because there's also been a lot of evolution in the way these things work. They're cloud-based. You can download the software and upgrade them, anywhere in the chain of 600 or 1,200 stores. And what's in it is super interesting. It's all the product details, all the PLUs, all the brand details, the quantities, and everything else. So just park that thought for a second, because irrespective of what happens around the point-of-sale system, whether it's a scanner to scan a product or a QR code, or it's an NFC terminal for the cards or any mobile payment, the intelligence, the data is in the POS itself. So there's been an evolution in technology, no doubt about it, but not in experience. And here, let me refer to things that we live every day, whether it's in the online world, but also the offline world. Like points, for instance. I use a card which gives me a ton of points, and I can redeem those points, and it all looks very nice and slick and easy. The reality is, it's very difficult for me to redeem the points with the things that I really like, because that card provider doesn't really know what I really like. And it's very difficult for me to redeem the points in the first place, because it's heavy lifting for the user. It's all on us as a user to actually benefit from the rewards we were given. In the offline world, a lot of us use these things called stamp cards in coffee places, coffee chains. You buy 5, you get a 6th coffee. You buy 9, you get a 10th coffee free. We all use those. We always forget them. They're never with us when we can redeem those freebies. Same with store cards. They're never with them when we go to the actual department store. So the whole thing around the loyalty, the reward for your custom is actually not embedded at all with the experience. So I just gave you 2 examples here of why I don't think the experience has actually followed the evolution of technology. So why is that? There is one reason for this. It's to do with the industry. Here I'm going to focus more on the payments industry to start with. The payments industry obviously is actually providing a series of protocols and standards and equipment actually to make things possible. So the big push has been here in Europe, the advance of NFC contactless payments. There's EMV, which is a chip and pin in the US. There's always something new. And that is very much an industry agenda. So that's all well, but it doesn't really help with the general experience at retail. This is just about, in this particular case, the contactless payment with a plastic card is just a payment. Now, there's been some innovations around payment recently, of course, with the advance of Apple Pay and then Samsung Pay and Chase Pay in the US, and there will be something else Pay, Android Pay, obviously. Again, we're talking about a similar process here where instead of tapping a plastic card, you tap this thing here as a piece of hardware on an NFC terminal. All good, but not transformative. It's basically disrupting the plastic. It's shifting from plastic to phone, but not really leveraging the communication potential of this device. So the question the industries, and I here bundle 2 industries, the payment industry and the hardware industry, have tried to answer is, how do we make payment relevant for mobile? the real question should be, how do you make mobile relevant for retail? Now that question, guess who is asking it? The retailers themselves. So very interesting development that the mobile wallets that have the most success by volume and by share of checkout in their stores are the ones that have been pushed out on the market by retailers themselves. So Starbucks is still by far the largest mobile wallet out there in the Western world. And I put Alipay aside in China, obviously. Target has followed suit, and now we're going to have a Dunkin' Donut wallet and a few others. This is the privilege of very big chains which have enough cash to create these solutions that are proprietary. What's interesting here, though, is that the focus on the experience for the user has been the center point of those developments. So it's not just about paying with your phone, it's about receiving your stars if you're a Starbucks customer, be able to redeem those stars against a free coffee or whatever it is, and do that within the app. So the retailers actually are showing the way. But there is a snag here in that we're not going to have, in my opinion, an app for every single retailer we love to shop at. This is going back to the 60s and even the 80s, where you had proprietary store cards and so on. So let me pause for a second and go back in time a little bit and venture my view as to what has been the revolutions in retail, not since the beginning of time, but since the last 100 years, let's say. The first revolution is really the one of the credit card. So that one is interesting because there was a world pre-1958 or so where there were proprietary credit cards provided by one store to a set of customers, and another store would provide credit or a payment facility of some sort for another set of customers, and so on and so forth. And one day, Bank of America launched something called Bank America Card, which was effectively a bank card that could be accepted in numerous merchants. They chose one city in California, which name escapes me, small city, where they had a lot of the population already banking with them, and they equipped the merchants with acceptance devices to actually accept that particular card, and they created effectively a more ubiquitous bank card. The only snag was it was only for the Bank of America customers, so they decided to open it up, or open up their API, obviously they didn't call it that way at the time, to other banks in America. So now, for the first time, they created what was a ubiquitous and interoperable network for payment, which became Visa. And then MasterCard did the same thing with another batch of banks, and we know the history of this. Now we're 60 years on, and cash is still very much a dominant form of payment. Credit card and other forms of card payments have obviously, gone a long way since 1958. But that was a true revolution. Second revolution is an obvious one, is e-commerce revolution in the late 90s. Of course, we know the power of this. It's amazing, it's fantastic. It's one thing though, it's still not the majority of our spend or even our interaction at retail, which is done online. I don't believe it's going to be the majority of it for a very long time. So e-commerce is a big revolution in commerce, in retail, but it's not the majority of our spend. The third revolution is happening now, and that's the revolution in retail. It's what I call the experience. The technologies we have now on both sides of the coin, which is the consumer side with this, and the retailer side with their point-of-sale terminals, enables a new revolution in retail, which is the one where the experience is transformed. And what powers the new experience in retail is data insight. So let me first talk about the type of experience I'm talking about here before I dwell into how it is possible with the data. The experience is one where you can pay with your phone, obviously, by tapping it, but more importantly, everything that you would expect from your custom at a specific stores actually happens in your phone at the time of transaction. Whether it is the equivalent of that stamp card that we all had in our pockets and we never have when we need it, it's automated, it's a digital stamp for that product you just bought. Whether it is points, points is a very powerful loyalty tool which the likes of American Express have used and really successfully for years. Now imagine points for retailers, for each retailers that are automated in the app. You get your points immediately. The redemption of points against products that you like, not against products that the retailer think you may like. It's the credit of specific vouchers straight in your app. You've earned your freebie, your free coffee, whatever it is, it's straight in your app. You can redeem it there and then in the store. It's the ability to buy within your app or the ability to pre-order even. So all that stuff as described happens sporadically. Happening all together in one seamless experience creates a very different relationship between me as a consumer and the retailer. Now, when I say the data insight powers that experience, I just want you to picture the marriage of the customer profile and his or her purchasing history, everything that she buys at line item detail level. So if you marry these two things, now you know who that person is and where he is. You know what he buys. You know when he buys it. And now you've got effectively profile, behavior, preferences all in one. You have that data that enables you to create very powerful, contextualized marketing effectively to the benefit of the user and the benefit of the retailer, of course. So it's not data here that I'm talking about, it's data insight. And if you remember the two images of earlier, it's the linkage effectively of the point of sale terminal where all the data resides and the profile of the person. That is the mobile rail for retail. And it's beyond payment. Payment is actually an enabler to a different retail experience. It's not the end in itself. Some players in the industry believe it is the end in itself. I think the consumers and the retailers don't think this way. So the payment is important because it's at the center of any buying transaction, obviously. But the payment is not what constitutes the experience. So the data in the point of sale is what constitutes the rail, and the matching with the profile of the user constitutes the experience. So if you think about the wallet itself, the wallet is perhaps the most contextualized environment, and I even call it a marketplace for the user and for the retailer engagement. Why? Because when you're on a wallet, whichever wallet it is, you're in a buying mode or a paying mode. And this is where contextualized offers, rewards, vouchers, whatever it is, based on your preferences, makes sense and you react to it. What I'm saying here is more contextualized than an ad on Facebook when you check in the status of your friends. So the wallet is incredibly powerful because it's on your phone, and your phone is incredibly personal. So whilst I consider payment as the essential part of the transaction, and the payment should be incredibly slick and fast, just tapping a phone, it's the linkage, the interaction, the communication between the retailer and the consumer via apps or wearables in the future or other forms of wearables. That's going to constitute the retail experience that we all going to want. I'm not saying next year or in the next 2 years, now, because the technology that we've seen before exists today. So building the mobile rails for retail is about creating that interaction between the EPOS data and the mobile wallet in a way that we create very contextualized and personalized buying experience. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Alain. A great hand. So I'm very curious if people have been paying attention now. Are you ready for just a couple of questions?
Yeah.
I think, of course, it's very appealing now to go out in the sun and have a beer, I must say.
I'll do that right after.
The thought crossed my mind. But as Alain is here, please make sure that you ask everything you want. You got a question over there?
Why wouldn't you think Facebook look at the wallet? Because he already has all your behavior. It's just missing that bit of which type of payment you actually use to make purchases online.
So Facebook has a lot of data about you. One data it doesn't have, or they don't have, and it's very difficult to think of anybody that can have it without having an integration at the point of sale, is your purchasing history. Facebook infers what you like. Facebook doesn't know what you like. So I know, for instance, that, or I can know, that you buy Coke Light as opposed to Coke Zero, that you like double espressos, that you've bought X number of burgers in the last 3 months, or whatever it is. I'm just using very simplistic, in a way, food and drinks analogies, because the advance of mobile wallets actually has started in the food and beverages sector, but that applies to anything retail. So the purchasing data is super powerful, but it's not powerful in itself if you don't link it or match it to a personal profile. It's linking the two that makes it interesting for retailers and consumers. Because then imagine that your loyalty program are tailored to your own preferences. So why would you have a card, or even a digital card that tells you buy 9 coffee, get 1 free if you never buy coffees? Why would you redeem points against products you don't like, as opposed to redeeming points against products you like? So that's where the retail world will change, because, not the world itself, sorry, the interaction we have with retailers will change, because that data actually is here. It exists already, and the mobile phone creates that opportunity to engage directly with the retailer. So you can do campaigns as a retailer that are extremely targeted at a segment of the population based on their consumption behavior, based on their preferences. And it's not inferrals. You don't infer, you don't guess it, you know.
Great, thanks. I have a question here coming to you.
Hello, interesting. What about brands? So if I'm buying, for instance, Heineken in one retail location and then I go to another one, which is not the same brand, retail brand, how does this idea work to reward me?
So I'll give you an example at Yoyo Wallet. We live in a number of environments in the UK where people buy different, actually, let's take the beer example, buy different beers. So there's actually a brand from Canada called Coors Light, or Coors. They have a beer called Coors Light, which they wanted to push to students. So we know, by paying with Yoyo, we know what people actually buy, if they buy Heineken or Carlsberg, because that data is in the point of sale. Again, I insist on that. We know the brand details within the purchasing history. So what Coors wanted to do here was wanted to effectively change the behavior of students. So they actually pushed in the Yoyo Wallet a bunch of vouchers, about 1,000 vouchers, for a free pint of Coors. So guess what? These vouchers were gone in 5 minutes, right? So people would redeem their pint of Coors by paying with Yoyo at the point of sale. And then what's more interesting for Coors was not the fact that 1,000 students would redeem 1,000 free beers. I think they would have guessed that. What was important for them was to be able to see through the data that we provided the pattern of consumption of these cohorts of students. Are they switching from Carlsberg to Coors, or do they continue with Carlsberg? So the brand is a very interesting aspect of the equation here, and I didn't mention brands enough actually. When we talk about retailers, consumer engagement, we're still talking about the brand engagement. So now for the first time, the brands can actually have what we call an eyeball-to-eyeball relationship with the consumers, and use the retailer as a gateway as opposed to a gatekeeper. So brands should be able to engage directly, provided that I, as a consumer, allow it. And that's the beauty of the smartphone again. You can turn on and off things. You should be able to turn off, some type of advertising or vouchering that you don't want to see. If I never drink Coke, I don't want to receive offers from Coke or from fizzy drinks or whatever it is.
Great, thank you.
Hi. As a consumer, my credit card company already gets all of my purchase information, and what's more, my credit card works everywhere as opposed to Yoyo Wallet, which may be only in some locations, only in some stores and locations. The credit cards at the moment don't get SKU level data, but what's stopping the credit card companies from simply doing what you're doing, but just at scale 10,000 times bigger? Because they're already in there, and as a merchant, why do I want to take Yoyo Wallet as opposed to just partnering with MasterCard, Amex, Visa, and rather doing the delivery of vouchers across existing card networks?
Yeah, so the credit card companies actually have been trying for years for their member banks to do something called card-linked offers, and I said trying because it's never been really a very successful attempt, basically, because it's always after the event, and to your point, the SKU data isn't there. So the lack of SKU data is actually a limitation, obviously, because you don't know exactly, to my example earlier, that you're drinking Coke Zero and you're drinking Coke Light. You know that you bought at McDonald's. That's what you know through a card transaction. So actually, interestingly, the card companies are actually heavily involved in this new ecosystem we're talking about. Like if you take the example of the company I know best here, which is Yoyo Wallet, we're partnering with Visa. So why? Visa is the rail for payment, it's the infrastructure. If I'm a Visa shareholder, I'm not worried because they control the rails. So the innovation is not actually in the payments rail. Of course, we can talk about blockchain and stuff like that for the future, but let's not go there. The innovation is actually in the interaction between the consumer and the retailer through different layers of value. Yoyo is a layer of value, and Starbucks have their own proprietary layer of value, right? So the card companies have understood that their role is not to be at the forefront. Their role is basically to be the processor of transactions. So the banks are in the same environment as well. So some banks will issue their own wallets, but at the end of the day, the wallets that will win are the ones that will constitute effectively open loop wallets, multi-retailer wallets. And there will be obviously some tensions between some proprietary wallets and some open loop wallets and some bank wallets and so on and so forth. What I argue is that without the added value of personalized engagement through basically these vouchers and rewards and so on that are based on my preferences, these wallets will not really take off. I mean, we've seen that there's been wallets for a while now, for a long, long time. So I don't think the cards companies are enemies of that particular ecosystem. They very much fit in there. As to the earlier question, obviously, of course, new entrants to the market have to establish their presence, and that is not something which is done immediately. But the integration to the point of sale is the starting point here. Because when you start to be integrated into Micros, which would be the case of Yoyo Wallet, you can turn on Yoyo in pretty much any of the chains that accept Micros. Just one example, for instance. So that is actually a new era which is ahead of us, of the smart wallet.
But I think you're also targeting basically a user group that's basically not predominantly credit card user, for example, and basically in a certain niche where you actually can get a great reach, right?
Yeah, so when we download Uber, first thing we do, we put a credit debit card number in there, right? That's what we do. Uber, blah, blah, car, you name it. When you download Yoyo, that's what you do as well. So the card payment is part of a Yoyo Wallet experience. Yoyo enables you to pay at the point of sale by presenting a QR code to a scanner, and then you receive your rewards, your points, everything else in there. We have targeted specifically the university sector, and now the corporate sector, meaning students in the UK pay with Yoyo on campus, anything from their coffee in the morning, their breakfast, their dinner, their pubs, their food, and so on. People who work at Accenture or JP Morgan or Betfair, Honda, Hilton, pay their meal with Yoyo Wallet every day. So these are two different user groups, but they operate what we call closed communities. And now we're entering into the retail sector, so there will be some announcements later this year on that.
Great, thanks. Maybe still one final question in the audience, or was everyone satisfied so far? Yeah, over there.
Hi. Do you think this system of reward for purchasing, do you think this will only inform consumerism, or do you think there is power within that new platform, within this new iteration for retail, to affect ethical and charitable change?
Well, I think that I go back to the power of the smartphone here. So there's many things you can do. Like we're doing something right now with Save the Children, which is Save the Children is actually a brand in this case, okay? But the actual initiative is for good. What we're doing is we're taking the concept, which some of you may know, of the caffè sospeso, which is an Italian thing, where in some bars, particularly in southern Italy, you would go and buy a coffee, but you buy two coffees, in fact, one for you and one for the occasional homeless, which would turn up in the bar, right? So we've actually turned the caffè sospeso concept into something called a suspended coffee, where you basically would buy a coffee which normally would cost you £1.50, £3, okay? And the 150 goes to UNICEF, to Save the Children. So that is the type of thing you can do, and the retailer can push these things, obviously. We can push them as well. It can be a combination of the two. So we have a similar initiative with UNICEF. You can round up your bill and give to charity, things like that. So, of course, you can power very different things of different initiatives which are not consumerism related, to go back to your question, because we have a smartphone. There's so many great things you can do with that. But at the end of the day, you always have to give the power to the consumer. And that's the consumerism is obviously a very big philosophical debate. But I think that now with these technologies, it's the power back to the consumer. We don't like to get spammed. We don't like to get rewarded for stuff that, with stuff that we don't like. Nobody likes that stuff, right? So if you start to put everything in the context of myself, then you create a very different experience. That's what the technology enables now.
Well, I think you shared some great insights with us, Alain. So thank you very much for your contribution and also answering the
you.
questions. Give him a big hand.
Thank you.